Welcome, welcome everyone. It's Vanessa Chat with Nessa back with the special edition that should have happened last week, but I have the phenomenal Carol Boyer with me this evening. Welcome, Carol.
Welcome, Nessa. Thank you for having me.
Yes, Carol and I met several months ago through a networking group, and we stayed in touch ever since. And Carol is phenomenal. She has more than 40 years in academic, federal, private, and nonprofit sectors, with 30 of those years of that experience in the disability field. She brings unparalleled scope of service to her colleagues and networks. And most impressive, since 1980, she's been with JAFRA Cosmetics, and she is a premier leader, a district sales manager, leading a team of more than 400 people, consultants and managers across the United States. Phenomenal. And I've been wanting to have her on for a while. And she's the first person from a major beauty brand to be on Chat with Nessa. So I'm very happy to have you, Carol. Welcome.
Thank you very much, Nessa.
Yes, and I'm so happy and that I met you through a networking group, and everybody's been on here, phenomenal women. And I'm happy because you're the first one to talk about the importance of beauty, inner beauty and outer beauty in our lives, right?
That's
so I'm really excited to get this. You have such a phenomenal testimony too. So I want to take this from the beginning all the way back to childhood. You had a very interesting childhood. You had to overcome a lot of obstacles. And I want you to share with us that story from childhood.
Well, I'll start with going back to, it was November 1952, and it was just before Thanksgiving. I was 3 years old. My family, who are from an immigrant, my dad was born in Italy, so I'm a 1.5 generation Italian American. And so I'm waking up in the middle of the night to go to the bathroom. And I fell onto the floor as my legs just would not support me to walk. So I crawled to my parents' bedroom to tell them I couldn't walk. Of course, my mother's freaking out. And the next thing I knew, I was rushed to Children's Hospital in Washington, D.C. And there I remained for about 6 months till May 1953. They let me go home on Mother's Day in May of 1953. And so I stayed there for 6 months. And at first, the doctors thought I had meningitis. But after some further testing, they diagnosed me with poliomyelitis, as people might just say polio for short. It's a very dangerous virus. And it's the same virus that affected President Franklin D. Roosevelt. So this is a highly contagious disease. And I'm going to reflect back from many, many years ago, almost 70 years ago, because it's going to be very connected to what we're going through in the last almost 2 years. So this is a very highly contagious disease and has symptoms that are like the common flu: sore throat, fever, tiredness, headache, stiff neck, and stomach ache. For a few, though, polio affected the brain and spinal cord, which could lead to meningitis, and for 1 out of 200, paralysis. Well, I was one of the 1 out of 200, and I got paralysis in my right side of my leg and a little bit on my left, and there I was. So for 2 to 10 of those getting paralysis, the end result was death. So here I am. I didn't die. So I'm here with you tonight. So fearful of the spread of the contagious virus, many cities closed pools, swimming holes, that's what they called it back then, movie theaters, schools, and churches, forcing pastors and probably rabbis. They were reaching out to their congregations on local radio. They didn't have virtual kinds of preaching at that time, so they reached out to their congregations through the radio. So in 1946, there were 25,000 cases, and the number grew almost every year up until its peak of 52,628 in 1952, the year I contracted polio. Of these 57,000 something reported cases in 1952, there were 3,145 deaths. That's 18% of those who contracted polio then died. There's no cure for polio. So if you get it today in some of the third world countries where it breaks out every once in a while, there's no cure for it. And I wanted to let you know the Journal of Pediatrics at the time, everybody that grew up in my time and our parents and grandparents knew about Benjamin Spock. Every expert and most editorial boards warned against irrational hysteria. Polio hysteria was everywhere, and yet headlines and images of kids and others with polio were familiar features on the front pages in those summer months, because that was more prone for people to get polio because they were in pools and connected more during the summer months and seeing people. So headlines and images and people on the front pages. American parents were petrified. A 1952 survey found that Americans feared only nuclear annihilation more than polio. Hello. And even though I already had polio, I still needed to take both the Salk and the Sabin vaccines when it became available in 1955, and then the Sabin a few years later, as anyone who had polio could still contract it in another part of their bodies. I'm so glad I didn't get polio that affected my lungs. I think it possibly did a little bit because I get short of breath from time to time, and I was scared to death when a 3-year-old kid seeing people in the iron lungs. I mean, I didn't think they had a body. I just saw a head sticking out of this white cylindrical thing. And I had nightmares about that until I was about 12 or so, because I didn't see, they had the, time in the room when parents and family could come and visit. And I saw these people, just their heads sticking out with a mirror above them. And that scared me, because I didn't think they had bodies. And I thought that was going to happen to me. You're 3 years old. So, but because of my polio, I had some really cool things happen to me. I had the opportunity to meet then Vice President Richard Nixon. And that was in about 1957. And it was a March of Dimes, which only focused on polio back then, which Franklin D. Roosevelt helped to promote, but it didn't have government funding, which is interesting for that time. It was totally private funding. So it was a March of Dimes fundraiser for which I was chosen the March of Dimes poster child for Washington, D.C. Back to that in a minute. I'll connect that back. Back then, the March of Dimes focused only on polio. And as we all know, this organization focuses on birth defects today. So Vice President Nixon, it was going to be President Eisenhower, but when the president can't go to certain functions, the vice president comes and represents the president. And my mother would keep telling me over and over again, she didn't want me to make a mistake. I'm about 5 years old. If the man is bald, you call him, yes, Mr. President. If he has dark hair, you call him, yes, Mr. Vice President. I practiced over and over again so I wouldn't make the mistake of calling the vice president Mr. President. So we met at a gas station in Northwest DC. I think it was on Kennedy Street, interestingly enough, in Northwest DC, and the gas station was donating a certain amount of gasoline sales that day to the March of Dimes, and the theme was pumping gas for polio. It was quite interesting. So Vice President Nixon was there in an overall thing with, that's what they wore back in those days, the guys that pumped gas. And he was there, and they even had a young little girl that was African American. Back in 1957, they were trying to make sure they were diverse back then. And she had also had polio. And they had a congressman from Michigan who was African American to represent his constituents. So there was me and another little girl in this little motorized red car that ran on real gasoline. They actually the March of Dimes actually brought that little car into my neighborhood in Northeast DC so I could practice driving around in it. And of course, all the neighbors and the kids came out to see this little red car. So that was pretty cute. But then I never really got to drive it when it's at the gas station, but I got to play with it when it was in my neighborhood in Northeast DC. So I was excited. I got to go to various March of Dimes fundraisers around the DC area. And I met Patricia Crowley, who was a young actress at the time. She was in that TV sitcom called Don't Eat the Daisies. Doris Day was in the movie, and Pat Crowley was in the TV sitcom. I got to meet the First Lady of Italy for a promo event at Children's Hospital, which was not where it is today, and others at large fundraising events. And my mother told me I had to, look cute. And there's a bunch of very wealthy people that were going to be in this place. And so they would donate money, and they put me up on a coffee table. So, one of those things. And I was also on a local TV program, which was a jazz show African American jazz show called, that's the name of it, Capitol Caravan. And they had different jazz artists playing. And the production crew had to give me and this other little boy that had polio, they had to give us Baby Ruth to shut us up because we were making too much noise in the background. So,
wow.
yeah. So during my time at Children's Hospital, I underwent intensive physical therapy sessions, which continued for many years later. My parents also had to buy 2 pairs of shoes for me, as my right foot was much smaller than my left, which was another expense. Even though the March of Dimes helped with some of the things, they didn't help with everything. And for some of my shoes, they had to be made to order for me, very expensive too. I had a few major surgeries to help me no longer need to wear braces on both legs and using crutches, great. And I had more time spent in the hospital with these surgeries. However, when I was older, I learned about post-polio syndrome. So I was just doing great from the time I was 12 or 13 years old.
And then you got the syndrome?
Then I got post-polio syndrome. I thought, wow, I'm making it through my 40s and 50s and early 60s. Hey, maybe I'm beating this. No. Okay. So the post-polio syndrome is a disorder of the nerves and muscles. And it happens in some people, like myself, many, many years after they've had polio. And I'm going to call it PPS. PPS causes new muscle weakness that gets worse over time, pain in the muscles and joints, and tiredness. I'm supposed to take rest breaks. I don't do that the way
I know you don't. You work. Right.
So people with PPS often feel exhausted. In my mid-60s, I realized I had PPS. And I decided to get it diagnosed. I realized in my head, as I probably do. So I decided to get a real diagnosis by a rehab doctor at the National Rehabilitation Hospital down in D.C., which is right near the now Children's Hospital and the Veterans Hospital and many other, some Washington Hospital Center. This is only one of only a few hospitals, rehab centers in the entire country that focuses on post-polio syndrome. I now had to wear a brace on my right leg, which was the weaker one, and use a Canadian crutch on my left side. Needless to say, I was pretty devastated. I started to cry because for more than 40 years, maybe more than almost 50 years, I was able to do many physical things like walking long distances without getting too tired, playing some sports. I loved playing tennis and badminton, loved it. Dancing and bowling, I did a lot of that stuff without any crutches or braces. Well, no longer. Because of my polio, I've recently learned that I've lost 4 inches in my height. I was already short due to my genetics, and with one of my surgeries slowing down the growth of my left leg, so it wouldn't be too much longer than my right leg, so I wouldn't have to wear this big lift on my left shoe. And the one that was most affected by polio could catch up to it. So they shortened my height a little bit, and then polio starts, it gets worse and worse.
So can I ask you, how many inches have you lost in height total?
4 so far. That's not good. That's a lot.
Is that recent? Were some of the inches recent losses?
In the last, I would say within the last 8 years. Oh my gosh. So I made the bone density people take it. Are you sure? Can you take that? Can you do the test again? I said, you've got to do that test again. So now I need to take more vitamin D, more calcium, and I'm going to get calcium shots or calcium infusions coming up soon. So now we're going to go to the overcoming obstacles. You're going to go in for that question?
Yes, because you've had to overcome a lot because of your physical, but that was 40 years that passed with no symptoms. And now you have these new symptoms because of what you had as a child, polio. So did you know that the post-polio affected you later in life, or you just learned about it when the symptoms, you woke up one day and had the symptoms?
Well, I read about it from you'll find out because I went into the disability field and some of my things connected back up. And I knew about post-polio syndrome from working in that field when I was a young adult. And I knew about it and I said, wow, I'm making it through my 40s and 50s and early. I'm going to not get it. I think I'm okay. And it didn't happen. I said, I think I'm getting it. I started falling a little bit more. I was losing my balance, et cetera, et cetera. So
So that was your career choice to go into the disability field. You've done so much: academia, nonprofit, profit, government. You chose disability over 30 years of that experience because of what you overcame as a child physically.
Not quite. It came about a slightly different way.
Okay.
I didn't get into the disability field until I was in my middle 30s. And I'll tell you how that happened. And it goes back to the March of Dimes. So, I really do believe that having had polio and post-polio syndrome helped prepare me for any type of obstacle that might get in my way, no matter what. So I'm going to emphasize the gratitude I have for my parents, especially my mom. My dad worked. He was a barber for all his life. And I come from a blue-collar background. So no matter what, so my mom was so devoted. She helped me all these years. She stayed at Children's Hospital with me for many nights when I was first diagnosed. But she couldn't stay there indefinitely because she had an 18-month-old little boy, my brother 2 years younger than I. She had to take care of him. So she also took me to all my physical therapy sessions, orthopedic doctor visits, and nursed me through all the surgeries that were done on my legs and my feet. She even went to my school to pick up my homework when I was sick with I got all three childhood illnesses, which we have a vaccine for now, a shot, which was, measles, mumps, and rubella. I got one after the other. I'd go back to school and I'd get sick with the next thing. Back to school and get sick. If it weren't for my mom going to my school, picking up my homework and assignments, they were going to hold me back in first grade because I missed more than the number of days you should miss. So, and my parents also sacrificed for me to send me to a parochial school in Northeast DC. That was expensive. It wasn't cheap. And so she felt that the nuns would, better protect me than being in a large public school environment. And indeed they did. They had me go out a side door during fire drills so I wouldn't be rushed down the hallway with kids, queuing up and getting out of the school. So when I was in high school, I was coming up and I wanted to help out my parents. So I participated in a contest in my grade school. My grade school went from first grade to eighth grade. I didn't go to kindergarten because in my olden days, not everybody went to kindergarten. My mother always said, that's for kids that need more socialization skills. Because I asked her, why didn't I go to kindergarten? And she said, we didn't need to. I actually had to be put in a harness when I was a little girl because I would run up to strangers and introduce myself. So maybe there's my sales thing. I'd say, hi, I'm Carol. What's your name? So nevertheless, I participated in a contest and I won second place. So it would help my parents with my tuition for this expensive all-girls high school. And I think that's why I'm very focused on women's issues. And you'll see that connected, very focused towards women because I never had any sisters. So I have a strong affinity to help women because of how I grew up. I won a Maryland senatorial scholarship in high school. To this day, I don't know. Somebody put this in for me. I don't know how or why, but I got 4 years ride for college.
Wow.
I'm proud to say that I completed my university BS in 3 years. I really wanted to give back to my parents for all the financial burden that they had to endure with my polio. And as you may start to realize by now, I love competition and challenges. I want to show to others, but mostly to myself, I can do it, you can do it. And in my life, I also had to deal with family health issues, with my mom being diagnosed with depression and threatening to take her life. She was in her mid-50s at the time, maybe in her late 50s, I think. Her younger sister did indeed commit suicide when she was only 36. Due to depression, so I was freaking out. I had to sign documents to get my mother hospitalized against her will because she wouldn't go for treatment. And this event was very draining for me, as my mom was very angry with me, and that was hard to take. It was really difficult to take. But she got better. My dad was very old school. He didn't understand about getting mental health treatment. So I, as the oldest, had to take matters under my belt. And then several years later, my mom contracted pancreatic cancer. She didn't drink much, nor did she ever smoke. She inhaled a lot of smoke with her sister and her brother and her father smoking in the household she grew up, which might have contributed to. But to this day, I believe that her depression compromised her immune system. I'm all about people, staying healthy, de-stressing, take care of yourself before you take care of others.
Yes.
And my mother was always taking care of so many people, and she took care of her mother, who lived to be almost 100. My grandmother died just 8 months before my mother passed away. My grandmother was really interesting, and she did live to be almost 100. So my mom passed away just before her 67th birthday. So that was pretty hard to deal with. And then years later, about 9 years later, I had to deal with a serious family legal issue. I won't go into the details, but it lasted almost 3 years. A lot of families have that when it comes to money and blah, blah, blah. But needless to say, this was a very hurtful time in my life, as me being the oldest sibling. And it was hard. It was like getting a divorce from three very belligerent husbands. It was like 3 against 1. And needless to say, I prevailed and I won my legal case that was against me, which I didn't do anything wrong, but they thought I did. And it took a very hard toll on my family's financial, spiritual, and my mental health. So what I learned about myself from all these trials is that when I have a difficult issue to resolve, I find all the ways I can to fix the problem. There's not one way, there might be multiple ways. So now we can get to how I connected to the disability field.
Yes, because I wanted to know if that was connected to polio.
Yes.
Did you feel a leading in that area because of what all the trials and tribulations you had in your health as a child?
Yeah. Yeah. So, after I graduated from high school, that was in 1967, I attended.
The year I was born, by the way.
Oh my gosh. So that was the year I graduated from high school, 67. And the class of people that took the SATs in 1966, which was my cohorts of that time, we had the highest scores ever on the SATs. The people that, when you're taking the SATs when you're a junior. So I'm not talking about me and my individual class in high school. I'm talking about across the country.
Wow.
So there you go. So there's a lot of people that were born in my year, like Lionel Richie and Stevie Wonder and Meryl Streep and Sissy Spacek. And we're all over the place. After I attended the University of Maryland, I went to the University of Maryland College Park. I majored in psychology, and I got a BS because I wanted to be a medical doctor because I was around doctors all the time. So I figured, hey, but for me, I did have a lot of science classes. So my advisor told me, why don't you get a BS? Because in the psych department, you can get a BA or a BS. And I said, okay, that's what I did. So, but my true love was history. And I took a history class from a wonderful professor who got me turned on to more history because I've always loved history. And I decided to change I graduated with BS in psych, and then I went to get a master's in early European history. And I ended up being a teaching assistant for the professor I had when I was an undergraduate, when I was in grad school.
Amazing.
So my husband and I were both grad students at the University of Maryland. I started my own little business typing grad students' dissertations from their handwritten documents. Some of it was typed, some of it was handwritten. During this time, there were no computers, and any mistakes on a page had to be totally redone, or to use whiteout and wait for it to dry. And there was no way to save one's work electronically. If you made a mistake.
Oh, I'm old enough to remember back in the day before all this.
Yeah, you do. So, and then I had to assist a lot of these grad students with their citations, as many of them didn't realize they needed to cite their sources. They would put things down. This is before we had Wikipedia and Google.
Oh, yeah.
But they still couldn't, if you paraphrased or quoted something, you needed to cite the source. And they didn't always do that. So I spent a lot of time calling the librarian services at the University of Maryland's McKeldin Library. That was the only library they had then. And I helped them get the right citations for their papers. So one of the grad students liked my work so much that he referred me to his professor. This professor was starting a new course on objective writing. So my academic teaching career began.
Wow.
I went to academia and I taught adults who were seeking college degrees at the University of Maryland, University College, which is now called the Global Campus. You know, they advertise it on TV all the time.
Mm-hmm.
It's not called the University College, it's called the Global Campus, da 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 da.
Yeah.
I taught adults, yes. So they were people that worked full time during the day. And this is for more than 43 years ago. So one of my students, she's still my friend for more than 43 years ago. And she's my friend to this day. And then I'm going to share with you how I got into the federal sector.
Yes, because, so how many years did you teach? How many years did you teach?
About three, but I also was a teaching assistant when I was in graduate school. So I got a free ride, you know, in order to get a teaching assistantship at the university level. So I got a free ride for undergraduate. I got a free ride for graduate school because you need to show your good grades and stuff to get even a teaching assistantship. So my grad school was paid for. My undergraduate school was paid for. And, you know, the rest is history. So
now, I do have a question. I didn't put this in there, but I want to know when did you all get married? Was it before graduate school, college? You were both grad students at the same time. When did you marry your husband?
Almost 52 years ago.
Wow. That's phenomenal.
26 and we both decided to go to grad school. I was almost ready to graduate. So it was from graduate school. I went to graduate school soon after we got married, and we lived in Vicksburg, Mississippi for a short time. He lived there longer than I, because that's where they sent him. So instead of going to Vietnam, he went to Vicksburg, Mississippi.
So your 52nd wedding anniversary is this year?
Coming up in December.
And I know you have to have, every year you've had this is not in the questions, but I'm just curious. Every year you've had a milestone. Did you do something big for the 50th anniversary, or is every year different to celebrate?
Yeah, we that was a couple years ago, but we did something right before that. We went to Egypt again and we did a cruise down the Nile. My husband loves Egyptology. He loves it. He's a scientist, but he likes history too. And I think that's why we gravitated to each other. He loves history, even though he's a scientist.
Wow. So from academia to the federal sector, I mean, you have so many years of experience. Tell me how that transitioned from academia to the federal sector.
I'm about to say that. So in the mid 1980s, I was watching the news. I saw a March of Dimes event at the White House with a number of March of Dimes poster kids. Now, this is during the Reagan era, and they're now adults. These are kids that are now adults. And they were at this nice dinner or some function with President Reagan. And I'm sitting there watching the news with a big pout on my face. And I go, man, I didn't receive an invitation to that. But of course, at the time, I didn't know what my March of Dimes poster child thing was. So I realized that, and I called within the day or so and spoke with the public relations manager with a woman named Charlene. And during our phone call, we realized we both have had polio. And we shared the same orthopedic surgeon, and she had some of the same surgeries that I had done. And she told me that if she had known about me, I would have received this White House invitation, because I was March of Dimes, Washington, D.C. poster child. I wasn't a national March of Dimes poster child. So I was a local celeb. So she would have invited me if she had known about me. But we both are the same age. And we both have the same initials, although she kept her birth name, Baldwin, and I decided to use my husband's name. If I were a little older, I probably would have kept my birth name. The women's liberation movement taught me to say birth name and not maiden name, because it sounds too weird. So nevertheless, we also discovered that her right foot was her larger foot and her left was her smaller one. Vice versa of ourselves, and we decided to meet up to exchange our extra shoes because we often had to buy 2 pairs of shoes. She told me about Nordstrom. Nordstrom allowed, because one of the vice presidents at the time of Nordstrom also had polio, and he made it a point that people that had odd shoe sizes did not have to buy 2 pairs of shoes, and all the staff were so well trained at Nordstrom's that I would go and get my shoes at the children's department. I paid for one pair of shoes, but two different sizes. And I would send her, Charlene, the other shoes because she could wear the opposite. And she sometimes sent me, we would mail them to each other. I actually have a pair of sneakers to send her. But
So,
there you go.
question, to this day, do you still have two different size shoes?
Oh, yeah. Oh, yeah. Oh, yes.
So after polio, for the rest of your life, your feet are different sizes.
Oh, yeah. I have to always buy two different pairs of shoes.
So you've always done, is it mainly Nordstrom's, or have you found other resources since then?
Nordstrom's is about the only one, although Zappos has some shoes, Zappos.
I've heard of them. Mm-hmm.
Not all their shoes have odd sizes where you can, but you have to ask them, do you have the shoe I want? And I can buy two different pairs. You just have to talk to a representative. They're wonderful on the phone, and they will help you. But not all their shoes do that, but they're going to help you if they've got it. So Zappos, but Nordstrom's would be anything, even for adult women, because I would pass by those beautiful high heel shoes. I can't wear high heels. And and I go, whoa, those are really swanky and sexy. I can't wear those. I stay in flats all the time. So Charlene introduced me to another, here we go with the federal connection and how I linked my writing skills and my disability background to get into the federal government. So she introduced me to another woman that had polio. She was just 2 or 3 years older than us. And Ruth was an architect. She had almost her PhD in architecture, who worked for an independent federal agency, which is now called, for many years, the U.S. Access Board. But in the mid-'80s through the early '90s, it had a much longer name. It was called the Architectural and Transportation Barriers Compliance Board, or the ATBCB, and you'd answer the phone, and you go, ATBCB, and they go, what? ABCD? ABCD. So we all met for lunch one day in a nice restaurant in the downtown part of DC, and we all met because we thought it would be cool to meet. And I expressed an interest in using my writing skills and my disability experience. And Ruth helped me with learning how I could be a client of my local vocational rehabilitation agency, people call it Voc Rehab, to apply for a federal position. So I filled out the paperwork and all of that, and they get points if they find someone with a disability that they can get a job in the federal government. So I was hired.
Wait a minute, is that true to this day?
Yes,
or is that...
yes, it's
really?
called Schedule A. It's called the Schedule A Hiring Authority. And if you've got a disability or a family member has a disability, you can apply for federal jobs under the Schedule A authority. It's like a leg up,
wow,
so to speak. And so it helps people with disabilities get jobs in the federal government. But
I never knew that. I never just learned something new. Okay.
So for all of you out there that don't know about that, let me tell you. And there's also the Workforce Recruitment Program, WRP.org. My former agency in the Department of Labor helped funded that. And it's for college students or those that are about to graduate. And within the first 2 years of graduation, it also helps them get paid internships in the federal government. And a lot of times they love the work that you do so much, they might hire you with a full-time position when you graduate. So that's great. There's a lot of great programs out there that most people don't know about. So, So here we go. So I then was hired at this U.S. Access Board, and the rest is history, as the cliche goes. So up until
all that experience that you have, academia, federal, nonprofit. My next question would be, you've been with JAFRA for years. Do you feel like the skills and the leadership that you gained through academia, government, has led you to this great success you've had since 1980 with JAFRA as a leader at the JAFRA Cosmetics company?
Right. So basically, I used my writing skills because I was teaching courses in writing. I had a very good English teacher in high school. I had her for 2 years in a row. Yeah,
that was my favorite subject in high school.
I loved it. I'm a kid that liked doing diagramming when I was in grade school. I loved diagramming. I was so weird, but I thought it was so good, and it helped me learn other language skills, And it's very good to know how words are put together. So I was introduced to many disability rights activists who were instrumental in the fight to pass the Americans with Disabilities Act, which passed in 1990. It's the first civil rights act for people with disabilities. The people with disabilities were not in the Civil Rights Act of 1964.
Right.
They were left out. And people demonstrated peacefully by taking over buildings in 1989 to get that passed, and also to get the Rehabilitation Act passed in 1973. They did peaceful demonstrations, no rock throwing or anything like that, but they made themselves known. They sat in buildings, sit-ins, things like that. And people at these different federal buildings or employees would bring them food and things like that. So many of these people that were strong advocates and activists were people that were polio, people that had polio. So I also got to meet more presidents in my life because of my federal and disability field thing. I got to meet President George H.W. Bush twice in my life.
Wow.
Unfortunately, I didn't get my picture with him. And I met his son also, have my picture with him, as well as President Clinton.
I always called him Baby Bush.
Yeah, Baby Bush, yeah. As well as President Clinton. He's just a good old boy. So as well as President Clinton at the dedication of the statue of President Franklin D. Roosevelt. It was a very small group of people that were invited. And it was because of my work in certain disability functions in the federal government and in nonprofit sectors that had federal grants and contracts. I was able to get an invitation to that very nice ceremony. And everybody was buzzing around Angelica Houston because it's her husband that was the sculptor of the statue of Franklin D. Roosevelt.
I didn't know that.
Him in a wheelchair. And people forget they were all around Angelica Houston and not to her husband, who was the sculptor, and he was being honored. So, and that was the last formal event that President Clinton did. And I was very honored to be at that event. It was cold January, it was under a tent. So then I worked as a volunteer president for the National Association of Partners of the Americas, Maryland Rio de Janeiro Partnership. And I had the opportunity to travel to Brazil in 1988. And I got introduced to Zonta International from my friend from the writing course I taught at the University of Maryland. And it's all about raising the status of women globally and locally. So here I go. Let's go to, and I volunteer.
The JAFRA. I wonder, how does all of this lead to JAFRA?
Yeah. And I do all kinds of stuff. So I had no desire to go into the beauty business, beauty industry. Not interested in that. I was always very concerned about my skin. And as I continued to have acne and blemish issues from my teenage years into my late 20s, maybe from all the drugs that were given to me as I was, all the different me during surgery. In 1978, I was introduced to JAFRA by attending a party in Maryland. And I was pregnant with our second daughter, and I thought my skin is going to break out even worse as it had done with the first daughter's pregnancy. So, I tried the products and I fell in love with JAFRA's signature product called Royal Jelly Milk Balm. Royal Jelly, it's a natural ingredient and it's from the honeybees. And when I put it on my face, I said, oh my gosh, this feels like liquid velvet. And my skin started clearing up and looking better and better. No breakouts like I did with the first pregnancy. And so I decided to be a host and at a couple of JAFRA parties so I could get the free Royal Jelly Milk Balm, because that was the hostess gift at the time. It's much more expanded now. But after my second party, the consultant, who was a dental hygienist, that was her full-time job at the time, she expressed her compliments to me on why I should consider enrolling with JAFRA as a representative. And at that time, I had 2 young daughters now, a new home that we're trying to pull together, and I was teaching that writing course at the University of Maryland. My first response was, no, I don't have time. She did ask if I would be open to attend a JAFRA awards luncheon. Well, I was open to that because I like free food. And I figured, why not? She's been always nice to me. I said, I'll go, what the heck? I'll go. And I realized that the JAFRA women that attended were completely different from what I had in my head. They were all different ages, different ethnicities, different cultures, beliefs, professions, different body shapes, all different things. So I liked the awards these women were receiving, going up on stage, etc., and I know I like
Mm-hmm.
that in my life from all the other things that I like trying to achieve. And I like competition and challenges. So I started thinking more about enrolling, but I still wasn't sure. I had to attend a couple more JAFRA events to convince me to enroll. And as I met other women who seemed to truly love their JAFRA businesses and, of course, the product. So I finally enrolled. And when my young daughter was 1, I held my first party with some of the nursery school moms. And to this date, one of these moms that attended my first JAFRA party is a consultant. She's just a year or two older than I am. She's in her mid-70s. And I enrolled her after her many years of loving her JAFRA products. And she still to this date has a JAFRA.
Wow.
She mainly loves it to get the products wholesale. She happens
Right.
to be. So a few months later, when I became a consultant in February of 1980, I learned about the JAFRA Leadership Program. I wish they had told me about that from the beginning, but I found out a few months later. So I learned that I can make more than my 50% commission. And I go, wow, that's for me. So I did what I needed to do to move up to JAFRA Leadership. And I have never left the JAFRA Leadership Program, ever.
Wow. Impressive.
Stayed there. Now, over the years, I've earned almost every JAFRA trip, received wonderful gifts of Swarovski jewelry, and many more physical gifts from the company. They're so giving. But it's the gift of helping others succeed in whatever they want to get from the company, no matter what it is. Everybody's at a different level. That's the best reward, is to see people succeed in what it is they want. Some people want a little, some people want just wholesale, some people want more. I'm there to help whatever they want.
Making their dreams come true. That's what you specialize in.
Correct. So we're ready for your next question.
Yes. Now, you know what? All the leadership roles you had led to, how long did it take from consultant to district manager? How long was that between joining?
No, let's not. You go from consultant to manager and manager to district manager. And
yeah. So how many, tell me the years in between the titles, because if you've had many.
No, I can't remember.
You can't remember.
I've been a district manager for more than at least 35 or 36 years.
Wow.
I've stayed at that title. I'm going to move up. I want to move up to district director very soon.
Oh, great. Congratulations early.
Absolutely. I'm going to.
And your team is over 400, right? Nationwide?
Yeah, approximately right in that zone, because there's other people that are leaders that are in my district.
Okay. Now, you've had many keys that I think have led to your success, but I want to ask you, what are the keys that you feel have led to your years of success in JAFRA and in leadership as a district manager?
Well, I think the first thing is be authentic. Apologize if you said or done something wrong, and I do put my foot in my mouth. I'm human, and apologize right away if you upset someone with anything you might have said or done. And yeah, I've done it. I think everybody has. And the main thing is just to support people for where they are at the time of where they are. And I want to make sure that everybody has a gift of gratitude, that every morning when you wake up and you're alive, that's a gratitude moment. Yeah. And I sometimes forget that you have to thank whomever your belief is. I thank God. I got to thank him more because I forget, because I get wrapped up in things in my life, and I have to thank him for what he's given me. I have a great life. We are financially secure with or without JAFRA. JAFRA is just a little icing on the cake, and I don't need the JAFRA income, but I want to prove to others that this can be something to help you. You may need this in your life for financial reasons. I meet people that are more, they're afraid to move out of getting disability Social Security income. They're so afraid. And I said, you would have to sell X amount of dollars, which not that many people do, to lose your Social Security benefits. Why not get a little more icing on the cake so you don't have to be working from a level of wantingness than fulfillment? Yeah. So, but nevertheless, I try to help people wherever they are, whatever stage they're in.
That's very important because I find that people are caught in their comfort zones. And when you're in your comfort zone, I used to call that your broke zone. So it's great that you help people create it's about the person creating their dreams and they're having a vision and you help them achieve that. And then therefore you get even more successful because as you help others, you're blessed in the process. So that's what I have found over the years. I've had many years in sales, and I find that when you help others achieve their dreams and goals, you will automatically look up and you have all these fabulous trips and you have all these accolades because you haven't been selfish about Carol. It's been about the other people that you have wanted to help. And I think that's phenomenal.
Yeah, and I've got to walk the talk. And if I want one of my team members who wants to move up, I've got to do what I'm telling them that they need to do. And we got to do it together. And I'm here because I help them get what they want. And the main thing is you got to find people about where they are, what do they want, and why. And if they don't have, that's a very important thing.
So why?
The why. You got to know what your why is, or else you don't know why you're doing something. You've got to have your why. And my why is I'm here to help you with your why. My why is just that I'm here to prove that if I can do it, you can do it. And everybody has had pit moments in their life. If they've lived past the age of 15, 16, to adulthood, you've got to have something negative that's possibly happened in your life. Everybody has had pit moments. And it's what you do with those pit moments. And what do you say to yourself? You've got to say, this is bad. It's happening to me, but you have to say, but I can look at this in a different way and say, yes, this is happening to me, but it's not because somebody's making this happen to me. I have to look at it as, what can I do to make it better? It's more of not a reaction, but action out of it.
Right. And what am I going to learn? I call it trials and tribulations. What am I going to learn from the trials and tribulations that I've been through? If you look at your life, you could have passed away from polio like so many other kids did. But look at, God has blessed you and you're still here for a purpose. Yeah, this is why you're here. You are here for a purpose and you're fulfilling your purpose. And everybody has a purpose, but not a lot of people find that in their lives. So that's your testimony is really great from the childhood on, the struggles you had, health-wise, whatever you're going through now. I find that God is always going to bring you through it. And what lessons do you learn through the trial and tribulation? And they can be a blessing to someone else later on. And that's what you're doing with the women and other people at JAFRA. You're sharing your years of what you've been through is embedded in you. And it's a testimony to others, your story, and that I've overcome so many things. And I'm now here to be a blessing to you. That's how I view it. That's my view.
Right. And I want and they need to share their story.
Yes.
You can share other people's stories. That's fine.
Yes.
But it's better and to share your story of why you are in what you're in. And everybody has a story. Everybody has a story. I mean, we have people in our team that have lost family members. I mean, very, very hard. I mean, through violence. We have someone in our family, my daughter, everybody's got something that's unbelievable that has happened in their lives. And they come through it. And I call them resilient royalty.
Yes.
And we have men in JAFRA too. Many men have been great. We have men as well as women. So, and I think you wanted to ask me how I balance being a mom and a grandmother.
Yes, because you have a very busy life. I mean, you're always, every time I see you, you're saying, Vanessa, I'm having this workshop, jump on the Zoom. You're busy. You're a mother, a grandmother. A wife of 52, almost 52 years. How do you find the balance, Carol? How do you balance? And your success is still continuing to grow. You're going to the next level soon at JAFRA. So how have you found the balance? Mom, grandma, wife, friend, you're still a sister. You have many roles, in your life. How do you find that balance?
Well, we have our 6-year-old grandson lives with us with his mom. And I don't always have the time to devote to him because he wants to be the center of attention. He doesn't have any friends around here to play with. So his friends are adults. And he's home taking an online curriculum, which is a school that's always done their schooling online. He knows all about JAFRA, let me tell you, because he's been with me on so many Zooms. He's a fragrance nut. So he could teach my Zooms with me. And what I spent about 3 hours with him from this afternoon. We took a walk outside. We got the mail. I don't always have 3 hours. We played some Bananagram, which is like a Scrabble out on the table. And we have fun doing that. But I don't always have more than an hour or so a day. But he participates in a lot of my Zooms, so I bring him in. And yeah, I'm on my phone a lot. My husband doesn't use his phone the way I do. My smartphone is always with me. And he uses it mostly to make and send phone calls. He doesn't do any social media because he's in a field that he really shouldn't be in, that kind of thing, because he's in secure types of work in sciences for the federal government. He's a consultant, but he wouldn't even know how to use that. But he says, you've always got your phone in your hands, and he's right. So, but I do like every Sunday, almost every Sunday, we try to have a family sit-down dinner in the dining room. We have appetizers in our large kitchen, and my grandson, we drink a little champagne and we have cool apps, and then we go sit down and have a nice salad and a main course and a nice dessert. Sometimes my daughter, who lives with us, the one that was, when I was pregnant with her, when I learned about JAFRA, she's 42, and she will make a dessert from time to time. She made a wonderful apple pie last Sunday. So we have almost every Sunday a sit-down dinner. We try to make time to see different friends at least once a month. We either have dinner with them in our home, or we go have dinner with them out at a restaurant or at their home. Friends as much as possible, and find out what's going on in their lives, and you find out something might have happened to them. So I like to get together with friends, just keep in touch with them, see how they are. I call some of my cousins, and sometimes when I call them, they think, oh my gosh, somebody died. No, I'm just calling you. I'm just calling you to see how you are, and I had a nice time talking to my first cousin yesterday. So my husband and I will go to a couple movies twice a month, especially since they reopened the movie theaters. Thank goodness, because we like that. We don't always want to sit in front of the TV and watch movies. And so we go out. We sometimes take a drive back to our old neighborhoods and look at where we grew up to see what's going on. And so we can do so much on our smartphones today. I mean, I can be driving in the car while my husband's driving, and I can text and do all these other things.
And you're doing your JAFRA business sometimes, right? From the car?
From the car, from watching commercials, when there's movies that break with commercials or news or whatever, I can send out a couple texts while.
Oh, I know. I know what it's like to never turn off sometimes and still be working from your phone.
Not a good thing, but what I've done is I keep my smartphone downstairs in the kitchen plugged in, not near me by the bed. I will get to those texts and whatever, maybe 2 or 3 hours later. It can wait. If somebody really needs to talk to me, they can call my landline, which I'll hear. So I made it a point. So I tell some of my consultants, if you really, really need to get in touch with me and I don't respond to a text within an hour, call me on my landline. If it's something super important, you know how to reach me. But I just don't go grab my phone anymore first thing in the morning. I might not look at it for 2 or 3 hours. I'll be on. You
have to have some time for yourself.
Right.
You're married. You have to have that. You're married for almost 52 years. You have to take time for your husband. I like what you said, especially since I was just talking to my husband. I said, Michael, they reopened the theaters. We haven't gone to a movie since they reopened the theaters, and I want to see the new James Bond movie.
Oh yes. I
love James Bond. So I said, okay, that's it.
Daniel Craig is great eye candy.
Yes, and so this is the first movie I love James Bond. So when I saw the preview, I said, that's it. That's my movie. First time since COVID. At the theater, we've been out. We go to our favorite restaurant in Virginia. But You know what? I haven't been to a movie in the physical theater since they reopened. But this is Bond will be my first one. I think you have to have that downtime. You have to have time for yourself, your family. So I think it's great that you have some time with your grandson. It's a balance. It is a balance. Right. But I think you found the answer. Not always picking up that phone right away. Not always.
Yeah, I have another grandson that's 23, and Cadillac salesperson in Bethesda. He sells
Oh,
Cadillacs. Yeah, he decided not to go to finish college. He's selling cars, so he's a salesperson too, like his nana. And then his sister is 15. She's going to high school and she's working at a local restaurant in the Annapolis area. But you know, we have 3 grandchildren, but the one I spend the most time with is the one that lives with us.
and he's 6, right? He's 6.
And he's 6 and he's brilliant. I mean, he knows
I've
what
met him. I did meet him because we were on our meetup group a couple months back,
Oh,
and
yeah,
he got on the meetup group with you on the Zoom. I've met him.
yeah, he's a stitch. He's a
He
stitch.
seems like a handful. He would probably keep you really, really busy if you
Yeah.
were with him. Very active.
He wants to be the center of attention, but all my family, from the time they were infants, my daughters, my grandchildren, they've all used JAFRA products, because JAFRA has products from infants, for men, for teens, up to us seniors, and they all love it. Everybody, and I've got to get a care package to my 15-year-old granddaughter because she's going to need her skincare. But
And you know what? Look. I still have all my eye cream, my JAFRA samples of the Royal. I have all that because the neighbor hooked me up. She hooked me up with 3 or 4 months worth of samples. I will testify. It is fabulous, fabulous products. I will be a testimony for you. My husband loves. She even gave him a whole bunch of men's cologne. He loves it. He's used some of the skincare samples. It's a fabulous product. Before I let you go, though, I want to tell people that your website will be posted. So people need to get in touch with you. They'll have your website. This is a phenomenal woman, but I really want to get your advice for everyone listening.
Okay.
What advice would you give to an entrepreneur? Because that's what you're an entrepreneur. That's what you do. You run a business of 400 team members across the country. What advice would you give to people? Because you said it earlier, to come out of that comfort zone and take a chance, take a leap of faith. If you have a vision, you want to be an entrepreneur, what advice would you give to those people?
Well, as I said earlier, be authentic. Take whatever training inside your company, what your company offers, and outside of what your company offers. Some of it's free, some of it you might need to pay for, but you've got to invest in yourself. Because if you went to college or a vocational school or whatever, that costs money to invest in training. And it's so important. So if you see free training out there, take it. And yes, they sometimes offer you, a little more training for a price. If you like what they give you, go for it. And most important, follow up, follow up, follow up. If you're in sales, the proof is in the follow up. And if they say, I'm not ready or I'm not interested, always ask permission. May I have permission to follow up with you in 3 months to see what you might want to do in 3 months or whatever they say. And you need to make sure you schedule that so that you are true to your word, and find out what your clients' pain points are, what their issues are with whatever it is that your product or service can help them with, and fulfill that pain point or that issue with your services, and have a spirit of true gratitude for your clients, your customers, whatever you call them, and have gratitude for waking up every day and being alive.
Yes, that's great advice, Carol. Carol, you know what? I should have had you on a couple months ago. I think since I met you, I see you a lot on social media. I follow you. I think that you're phenomenal. I know that you're very authentic, but I was so happy that you came on because I didn't know your full testimony. And when I got your bio over a month ago, like, wow, she has such a phenomenal testimony from childhood on, all that you've overcome, the many things that you've accomplished, despite the obstacles you still have achieved. And I think that your story is one of overcoming and being victorious in that testimony, because to me, it's all, you're here for a purpose and you're still fulfilling your purpose. And I think it's phenomenal what you're doing, not just in JAFRA. JAFRA is the vehicle that God is using to help you bless other people, to help touch their lives and, say, can I help you with your purpose and help your dream come true? What's your story? And like you said, what is your why? And you learned that years ago in sales. This is the first thing I learned. Learn what someone's why is so you can see how you can help them and fulfill that need. And I think that you've been doing that for well over 40 plus years in your years of service in academia, the government, nonprofit, and now over 30 years plus, 40 years plus going on 40 years at JAFRA, and then going to the next level above district sales manager. I can't wait for you to put that notice out so we can celebrate together your next promotion. But that's all because you've been a blessing to other people.
District director. District director. That's what I want. I'm looking for.
You're gonna get it. You're gonna get it. You're gonna get it because because you serve other people, and when you're a servant, you have a servant's heart, and you care about people the way you do. God will make sure that happens. That's how that when you reap what you sow, and you've always sown blessings in other people's lives. So you're going to get it. I can't wait for you to call me and tell me, Vanessa, I got it.
I am so grateful to the woman that invited me to that first party, because I basically was just looking for someone that could drive my older daughter to preschool, and we only had one car. And she said, I'm having this little party, and the girls can. I'm grateful to that. And I'm still friends with the consultant that introduced me to JAFRA. I've known her for more than 40 years, and we are great friends, even though she doesn't live close anymore. And there you go. And she was a dental hygienist, and I ended up enrolling my current dental hygienist 40 years later. And I said, this is coming full circle.
Yes. And so I want to say thank you. Thank you for taking the time. I know you're busy. Your schedule's crazy. I always see you're very busy. But I thank you for your service, years of service, from academia to public, for disability, advocate for women, women's causes, disability, those who you have done so much in your career. You're still doing it. So I'm very proud to know you. And thank you for who you are in the community, because you do a lot for people. I know you do. And you're very, very genuine. That's one thing I can testify to. You're a very genuine person.
Yep. And I do screw up sometimes, but if I do,
we're human. All of us do.
If I do, it's because I have a big mouth and I say things that come out wrong sometimes.
Honey, all of us do that. Everybody is human. Everybody has things that they do. And I just want to say thank you. Thank you for your testimony. I want everybody to reach out to you directly. Your website will be listed right under this broadcast. Please reach out to Miss Carol Boyer. She's phenomenal. If you want to start, just reach out to her in general with anything you need. I mean, she's here for people. She's served her community for years. And JAFRA is a vehicle to help you gain financial freedom, have a home-based business, and to get some of your financial needs met. A lot of people are in financial straits right now. This is a vehicle for you to gain financial freedom in your life, and to open new doors for your family and gain some financial freedom. Because until you're financially free, you're really, really still enslaved. And the thing is, take a chance, take a leap of faith, and reach out to Carol. And again, her website will be listed. And Carol, I want to thank you again for coming on Chat with Nessa. Thank you, and I'll talk to you soon.
Thank you, and I'm glad you love your JAFRA products.
Oh, I do. I use it. In fact, my eye cream is getting low. I'll be in touch with the neighbor.
Barbara's having.
I can walk up the street. She's 5 houses up. I can walk up the street and get my product, because I don't need to put an order in and get it shipped, because she lives up the street.
Well, she's having an open house. She's having a holiday open house, so watch for that.
I will, because she tells all the neighbors when it's coming, and she puts a flyer in our mailboxes. We tend to know. So that's great. So thanks again. And I'll talk to you soon.
And I'm honored. I am so honored to be part of Chat with Nessa.
Yes. And thank you for all that you do, Carol. You really make a difference in a lot of people's lives. Thank you.
So do you. As do you.
Thanks. Take care.
Okay. Bye-bye.
Bye.